All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. Again, welcome to everyone who has just joined us. I'm talking about a topic that is very topical. It is in the news. It is out there. I'm going to talk more about a process that we're actually engaged in now to determine that future to some extent. And so I'm going to give you a bit of an update on where we are with respect to the president's task force on AI. Some of you may be hearing about this for the first time. Maybe you're saying, I didn't even know that there was a task force. And so now you know. And I'm going to actually, in about a week and a half from today, with my co-chairs of this task force, be presenting to the President's Council our preliminary recommendations. So I'm going to be sharing those preliminary recommendations with you. And so in that sense, it perhaps is a little bit of what the future might look like. But bear in mind, these are recommendations, these are preliminary, and there will be adjustments almost certainly. And so what I'm hoping for actually out of this, I have I have an agenda here, is to get your feedback because it is a week and a half and this is moving very quickly. And we've had a huge amount of engagement with the university in general, and this counts as part of that. And so there's an opportunity for you to affect what is presented and how we go forward in terms of this future. And so with that context, are you ready? You're ready. Okay, good. All right. Everybody's well snacked. That's good. We have good snacks again. Are the posters great? There's only one right answer to that. Yes, the posters are great. I can say that already. All right. So the task force that I mentioned was convened in late December of 2024. We actually didn't uh, officially get our charge and meet with the President's Council until March. And so that was really, I think, probably our biggest kickoff event. And now it is here. We're approaching May, and that's when we were charged to actually develop our first set of recommendations. What our task force charge was specifically was to first of all benchmark the investments, policies, and processes at peer institutions, right? That's about what you would expect to see. Do a landscape analysis of what's out there so that we kind of understand where we are and how we measure against our peers. In particular, also include information in terms of the compliance requirements in the different areas that AI might be considered, especially at an academic university, and then deliver recommendations in terms of what new resources, policies, and processes might be required to help us move forward effectively. Think also about how this impacts stakeholders and also think about the cost of these investments. Now, there were three areas in particular, and I think it might be listed here, that we were asked to develop subcommittees around. I'm chairing the research subcommittee, and I have about 15 people in that committee. It's a mix of faculty members from different disciplines, research staff, and students who are part of this committee. And so what we've hoped to accomplish is a network of networks, right? So these individuals in some way are engaged with other groups on campus and are able to get information from them. And then we've been doing a bit of a roadshow, much like what you're going to see now, to try to, again, elicit feedback in terms of where we need to go going forward. Education and administration are the other two. Our timeline, as I mentioned, we really updated or met with the president's cabinet in March, and we'll be delivering these recommendations in a week and a half in early May. This will be an iterative process. So when we get the feedback from the cabinet, we will work over the summer to implement, but also to refine some of the recommendations that we've made. Does that make sense? Any questions? You can jump in at any point. This is the nature of this is really hopefully interactive. Our process follows the charge pretty closely as you would expect. And so there's nothing new here, but just want you to be aware that there is the benchmarking. That's an ongoing process, as you might imagine. Nothing in this space is stagnant. Likewise, with reviewing the compliance landscape, which is also rapidly changing, identifying stakeholders. We did a big push at the very beginning and have one of the most impressive spreadsheets that I've seen of the university sort of governance around things in general, having to do with research, academia, and administration. And we've gone through a lot of those groups formally to present and engage with them. But that list is far too big for us to have been able to do in the time frame that we had. So we expect that those engagements will continue into the summer. Develop recommendations. You're going to see some of those here, but you're only going to see the ones relative to research. And because that's how sort of hot this information is. That's the committee also that I lead. So the education and administration subcommittees are still developing those recommendations and consensus around them. All right, so with that approach in mind, with the scope that we have, the task force members, as I mentioned, represent a broad swath of university research, students, and staff. And so this is a list of those members, and they obviously are engaging within their own communities. One thing that I'm happy to report is that the committee members for the research subcommittee are highly engaged. They are in. And so people have really made room in their schedules. These are busy people, as you saw on the previous slide. They're leaders in many areas, and they have really made time to be part of this committee. And when they're not able to attend, they engage with the notes that we create using the help of the AI component of Zoom. We're also leveraging the help of the Data Science and AI Hub, as well as some other leadership at the university who's engaged in this, specifically around research. The peers that we've identified for our peer survey are the 18 institutions that I've listed here. Many of them come from the HERD survey. So these are the top public institutions who measure at that top level with respect to their research and development expenditures, right? So as a public institution, we're about 11th in terms of where our spending nationally. There are other people on this list who are doing better or slightly worse than us in terms of that metric. But we also wanted to be able to draw from other institutions where we thought those institutions were doing things that were exemplary. So we weren't going to be bound specifically by the HERD survey. The report, we converged on a few things that we really wanted the report to speak to in particular before we even got to our specific recommendations. And that is, where are we and where do we aspire to be in AI research with respect to our peers? Because some of the recommendations would follow, right? And so do we want to be pretty good? Do we want to be excellent? Or are we okay just with whatever? And so that was an important element in terms of being able to, I think, justify our specific recommendations. How should our AI related to policy and procedures help us to get to where we were? Yes.
Are these peers?
They are the institutions listed just above that question.
The 18
Yeah,
that you.
the 18 that we listed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great. So we wanted to define the problem based on those peers. And by the way, the peers were not consistent across each of the subcommittees. And there was a reason for that, right? So for example, in admin, the more relevant set of peers are the Big 10 institutions. from a spend standpoint and also some of the contracting that we do, that's where they were focused in on. From an educational standpoint, it depended on discipline. It wasn't about the research dollars as it was here. Does that make sense?
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I'm going to jump into the draft recommendations, and there's 6, so they're not exhaustive. And again, I want to get your feedback on these, so I want to make sure that you understand what each one of these recommendations will actually entail. So the first one is to enhance research development and administration through AI. What does that mean? In a word, the first part means, how can I develop my grant proposal more rapidly than what I do without AI tools, right? What can I use in terms of helping me to define relevant literature, or even maybe a step before that? How can I get a more custom perspective of what solicitations out there relate to my research in a way that is going to help me target the ones that matter? Who here gets email from NSF, NIH, DOE, DOD about solicitations? Yeah, a lot of us do. And a lot of it is sort of drinking from a fire hose, like figuring out, is this one at all relevant to what I'm doing? And now I go to the solicitation, so I try to read the summary and so forth. But that takes a lot of time if you're reviewing a lot of these. And so there are ways that we can refine that information and get more directed content to faculty and staff involved in this. So that's the start. But then when I actually respond to the solicitation, how could I use AI tools again to better understand the basic literature, what's happening in that field, to demonstrate my expertise in that so that the grant is reviewed well? How does it read well, for example? If maybe English isn't your primary language, how can I develop a proposal that conveys my ideas as effectively as possible? And AI certainly can help with that. And there's developing ecosystem of tools specifically for that. So that's what this first bullet point is in a nutshell trying to suggest, is we need a set of tools and the training to use those tools to effectively submit proposals that are going to be a winning proposals. Anytime, if you have questions or observations, I would love to hear them. I will have my email at the end. And so many people, after I've done these things, have sent me beautiful emails, much of which has actually gone directly into the report. So I am inviting that now. Yes, question. I'll repeat the question so everybody can hear.
Some of these reviews, or for example, peer review that other journals request for you,
Yes.
sometimes have, well, not sometimes, they have deeply ethical privacy concerns.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
what is the university's take on usage of AI in peer review? And if the university will provide a forum where researchers can safely peer review using AI tools
Sure.
without problems of releasing that information to more open.
I'm going to boil the question down to privacy concerning either the review or the development of intellectual property. Okay, so the first part in terms of reviewing, there are numerous policies that the actual funding agencies have in the use of AI for reviewing. Many of those flat out prohibit that. Okay, so whether you have a private model or not, you're not allowed to enter that information to facilitate your review. That we're not going to change. So we're not going to contradict these funding agencies in terms of their reviewing policy. Now, on the other side, where, for example, you have some brilliant ideas and you should not be entering those ideas into a public LLM, because that is essentially disclosing that idea, that intellectual property. So what do universities do in those cases? And often it is to establish a private environment where that type of information is not disclosed broadly and can actually, you can then benefit from the model, for example, in helping you to draft the proposal or what have you. And so one of the recommendations in that first bullet will actually be directed toward what you're suggesting. And the policies also, we're doing more to consolidate those. Again, we don't make NIH's policy with respect to the use of AI, but we need to make that very clear to our researchers so that they're not making mistakes. Yes.
So in that regard, will there be an emphasis on training individuals on how to utilize and best practices and things like that?
Yes, great question. And in this regard of this first bullet point, will there be an emphasis on training? And yes, training and literacy with respect to that first bullet has to be at the forefront. So it's two parts, right? One part tools, one part training and literacy. That they absolutely go hand in hand. And we see that also, we just had a great panel that included people from industry, and they were highlighting this also within their own environments. Is often it's how do we effectively utilize these tools? Yes.
There's a focus on research here, but is there any work to see bringing AI into the education process to assist students in learning better?
That's a great question. The question for those in the audience who are not personally here, we have some Zoom folks, is will there be also an emphasis toward education and training? The answer is
not just training in AI, but
right.
Use of AI.
Use of AI to facilitate and to have better outcomes in education. The answer is yes. I'm chairing the subcommittee on research, though. And so I'm just presenting the research subcommittee recommendations. But I can tell you, because I meet with the chairs some now twice or three times a week, the answer is yes. They have a similar parallel track. But again, I'm only displaying now the recommendations for the research subcommittee. But I can assure you that the answer is yes to your question. All right. Number two, expanding the use of AI tools to accelerate research across disciplines. How is that different? That's different because what we're saying here is that we need both the training and the training around these tools plus the tools, but these are not for people who are, let's say, experimenting. Well, they're not developing new AI. These are people who want to use AI in the context of their research. That's how number two is distinguished from number three, which is to say we also need to invest in the development of foundational AI research, right? Where, for example, we're developing new models and we're developing fundamentally new methodology in AI. So 2 and 3 are different in that regard, but they both have an element. I would say 1 and 2 have that element of literacy and learning, as well as a good collection of tools, whereas 3 probably involves, and the recommendations that we're seeing that are more specific to 3, is that we actually need to look at our hiring in such a way that we're recruiting individuals who have expertise specifically in that foundational development. So that's 3. 4, number 4, strengthen the computing infrastructure and our data capabilities. So this is near and dear to this group, and you're going to hear from Ben Lynch next about our next 30 years, is it? 20 years? 10 years? 10 years, okay. Sorry, he's like, 30 years, what? So what can we do to ensure that the infrastructure we have for 2 very important parts of AI's success is set up in a way that we can be successful. That's what number 4 is about. Number 5 is a cross-cutting area where there's a tremendous opportunity for us to engage with how ethical and responsible AI is used within our research ecosystem. So the question of number 5 is, should we be doing it, not could we be doing it, right? And we have some fantastic experts here at the University of Minnesota who we need to engage with on that question in a very serious and focused way. And then this, yes.
Sorry, hearing you talk about the points, it seems that the university is pro using AI in research.
Yes.
But what is its stance on the sentiment that people who use AI, their research is less worth or worthy than people who don't use AI? Like the idea of doing the grind makes your work qualitatively or quantitatively better compared to, oh, you use AI, therefore your research is less worthy.
Right. So does using AI diminish in some way the quality of research? That is not a focus of I mean, that hasn't been raised by the committee members in this committee, but I think, as you suggested, we are forward-looking in terms of that. But I want, again, to bring number 5 in focus. There's also been a recognition that responsible use of AI is something that we need to consider, and that spans a broad set of areas, some of which also include the degree to which energy is consumed for some of the models that might be important to affect this area. And so there's opportunities to really expand in that space that we're actually highlighting. The 6 is to strengthen our engagement with communities, governments, industry to build this statewide ecosystem. This is something that if you stop by and speak with Haley Bork at the Data Science and AI Hub, you'll see how we're actually doing that now. We've been doing it for the last couple of years, but the committee is very eager to make specific recommendations that would help advance that area. So, yes.
Are these recommendations, do they include expanding funding to allow for such research to happen?
That's a great question. So do these overarching bullets include somewhere in there expanding funding to improve research in related to AI at least? The answer is yes. So there is specifically under 3 and 2 opportunities where we actually highlight the use of seed grants at some of our peer institutions to help foster AI and AI literacy in particular, but also fundamental AI work, but also AI literacy. So yes, good question. I've gone like 15 minutes, I think, over time, and we have other speakers who are coming up next. So I'm going to have to take the remainder of your questions. I love the questions that I was getting so far. The only other things that I had to say is that there's, just by the questions that we've had, there's opportunities, some obvious opportunities to synergize across administration, education, and research. And with the co-chairs meeting regularly, we're lifting up some of the more specific recommendations of each subcommittee in a way that we're not losing those opportunities. And so there will be some things, as per your question, that will strongly overlap in terms of our recommendations, and those will be delivered sort of above the specific ones within each subcommittee. And so again, thank you for your lively feedback. This was great to have such engagement. But don't think that if you didn't get a question in or I didn't hear your ideas, that you can't reach out to me. I encourage it. Please do. I would love to hear more from you. So with that, I want to introduce Ben Lynch, who is not going to be talking about the next 30 years for research computing or MSI, but he will be talking about the roadmap for MSI in up to 2035. So Ben, take it away.
Thanks, Jim.